Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Do More with Less by Orbital X. We speak to the world's greatest marketing leaders to hear and share strategic plans, tactical tips, and on-the-ground war stories of individuals fighting to work out how to do more with less. Now, today, it lives up to its billing, that whole greatest marketing leaders thing. I'm talking to Joe Lazer, an award-winning marketing leader, author, and keynote speaker who transforms how businesses build relationships with customers. Now, he's got one best-selling book already, The Storytelling Edge. It became a bit of a classic in the content marketing industry when he wrote it. His weekly newsletter on storytelling in the age of AI reaches nearly 200,000 subscribers. But what I'm really excited about speaking to Joe on is his upcoming second book, Super Skill: Why Storytelling is the Superpower of the AI Age. It's already an Amazon #1 new release. Joe, welcome. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. And sorry that the distribution schedule kind of puts the UK a little bit behind to the US. I wish I had control over that. I wish everyone could have the book right now. But hopefully you'll enjoy it when you get it in April.
Hello, sorry to interrupt. Do More with Less is a podcast and a webinar and a set of events that's made possible entirely by marketing resource group Orbital X. If you would like to know how we credibly claim many millions of pounds worth of pipeline influenced by our marketing resource group support and up to 60% of your closed won deals, give us a call, half an hour with one of us. Really happy to talk to you and explain how that works and how it might look for your business. Thank you for allowing this interruption. Back to the podcast. I have no doubt, because I am watching I'm familiar with that background of yours right now, because I'm watching your kind of newsfeed on LinkedIn explode with comments. As far as you're concerned, we're living through a new golden age for storytellers, right?
I think you could say that. I think that we're in the early days of a shift that I sort of anticipated and drove me to write this book, Super Skill. When I started working on the book 2.5 years ago, right, 3 years ago, I think the general perception is that I was crazy, because the narrative very much at the time after ChatGPT came out was that AI was going to replace writers and storytellers full bore. When ChatGPT came out, it was this moment where it was like aliens landed on Earth and suddenly they could write blog posts for you. And we all kind of lost our minds. And because that was the first use case that most of us saw around AI, there's a bit of an anchoring bias that takes hold. Right. It's the same, psychological dynamic that makes saying that something that's 50% off makes us want to buy it. Right. Is that we get anchored to the original number that we see, and then we think something is a good deal. The same thing happens to ideas and new technology. So we saw ChatGPT come out. We saw that it kind of crossed what I call in the book the TED chasm. Right. Where if you use generative AI tools before ChatGPT, like my team had experimented with at A-Team, through tools like Jasper that use the API, generative AI was like Steve. He's like this very, very mediocre to bad freelance writer that if you hired once or twice, you probably wouldn't hire him again, right? But ChatGPT jumped up to being like Ted, and Ted was like a C+, B-. If you had Ted on your team, you'd be like, all right, he's all right. He has a occasional moment of brilliance. He makes some stuff up, but we're not going to fire Ted. Ted is fine. It's too much effort to fire Ted. But once we saw that, we kind of lost our minds around it. But for me, when ChatGPT came out, one, I'm a tech journalist by training, right? My instinct is just skepticism around every major tech narrative, because everything has been wrong so far, essentially, at least the first narrative, right? Our first perception of social media was wrong. We thought it was going to be this democratic, utopic tool. Twitter was going to save the world. It was going to usher in democratic uprisings around the globe. But in fact, that we just see that it ends up being a vehicle for data mining and slop and some of the most abhorrent content on the internet, and absolutely no accountability for any of these companies. We see,
amen.
Yeah, we see with basically every big tech shift. And my son was born a few days after ChatGPT, so I was also worried, what skills are going to matter for him? What skills are going to matter for me, who just signed quite a big mortgage on an apartment in Brooklyn? Right? Would I be working at Target in a few years? So as I really started to dig in to what was happening with generative AI. I founded and started hosting this generative AI salon series in New York, started talking to future work researchers, corporate leaders, AI researchers. And what I realized was that A, all of this AI slop was going to increasingly flood the web, and it's only accelerating on this exponential curve right now. And that in turn was going to increase the value of great human storytellers who could break through the noise and create content that truly stood out amidst all the slop. And that B, if you actually looked at the pace of AI development, right, and research, it was likely going to get better at technical tasks and like data analysis and coding that you can objectively define as good and correct, right? Especially with a reasoning model, you can run the code, you can see that it works. With data analysis, the math is correct, right? Writing and storytelling is much more harder to subjectively, it's very subjective, right? It's much harder to objectively define. And with these two dynamics together, it was likely that we would see companies valuing great storytellers a lot more because you can't buy attention anymore. Ads I've seen as a CMO over the last decade just work less and less and less effectively. And B, as AI was able to do all these technical tasks better than most humans, we would all have to ask this fundamental question of what is my most inherent human ability, the thing that AI won't be able to do, even if it gets 10 times or 100 times better. And that's the relational part of work, right? AI can do the work, but can it rally 6 different stakeholders around an idea? Can it inspire a team? Can it build a culture? Can it build those kind of one-to-one bonds that deep down drive most enterprise sales? We think we buy things rationally, but actually we buy things quite emotionally and based on relationships and people that we like. So looking forward, my projection in 2023 was a couple of years down the line, we're going to be valuing storytellers a lot more, both as a skill for any role, whether you're in accounting, finance, marketing, sales, not just as a, pure marketing skill, but as this super skill that makes us better at all the relational work that would matter in an age where AI can do a lot of the sitting at a computer work that we've valued over the last couple decades. And B, that we would see this boom in storytellers being valued from a kind of marketing perspective and CEO comms perspective. Now, can I say that in 2023, I thought that we would be seeing job listings for $775,000 a year, here in the States for storytellers? Like, no, I can't say that I projected it would be at the level we are now. Like, do I think that is the norm or necessarily like a sustainable salary level? Maybe at some companies, right, at the tippy top of the tech market, especially as the amount of roles that we have overall probably get condensed a little bit, where the top kind of 10 to 20% of the talent market gets valued a lot more and it gets harder at the bottom and junior part of the talent market. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think that everyone's going to be making $500,000 a year in tech in a comms role, but I am willing to say that I think that storytelling as a fundamental skill for the future of work is highly underrated and will only grow in importance.
So look, I think that's an amazing summary of the journey you've been on since you started writing the book in 2023. You haven't yet told us if your son was named Ted or Steve. I suspect it was neither. But
his name's named Max Lazer. We wanted just the dopest name possible.
I mean, well done, you. Look, I'm totally with you on a few things here. I mean, there's things I want to challenge you on, but I am a storyteller. I didn't become one for the sake of content marketing. Like you were around at Contently, running Contently, which is an enormous business in terms of influence, if not everything else, right? But so you saw content marketing come in just as I did, and that's when grumpy, skeptical chief execs or FDs who wanted to talk only about numbers and performance understood that they had to say something. They had to have a log or a content calendar of stories that they could tell about their business. And and I know there's a difference, right, between a content marketer or content marketing and storytelling. One is where you can kind of really, really great content marketers can sometimes do both. But content marketing is about making sure that there's a volume and a kind of cadence of blogs and thought leadership white papers and events and kind of social posts, and like it's about units of delivery as much as it is about actually telling a heartfelt rendering story that's going to knock people down and make them want to read more. And even when it gets to the sort of subject or the topic, very few content marketers I've ever found have that ability to tell an actual freaking story as opposed to just something interesting about a product. Now, you say you had this kind of, and I love the fact that you saw a lot of this coming. But even when content marketing had established itself as a need and then ChatGPT came in, I reckon the boardrooms and the decision makers went, hang on, we've never been any good at telling stories. We've got content marketers, but we're not that good at telling stories. But now we can be not that good at telling stories, but quicker and cheaper. And like they go, actually, do you know what? It's not about the... So when I also woke up that morning that you did and went, brilliant, ChatGPT might take away absolutely everything I've ever been good at. I might have to learn a different trade. Like they weren't, the people that were deciding and starting to forecast and looking with dollar signs at their budgets of the future weren't going, we're going to keep, they didn't see what you saw.
Yeah, but look at the progression that happened, right? Who are the early adopters of that strategy of we're going to replace our content teams with AI and we're going to do this spammy low quality play with AI? It was the tech companies. The tech companies were the early adopters of AI because of course they are. The tech companies are always the early adopters of this technology. So what happens? They adopt it. They start spamming all this programmatic content with AI. They cut their teams. They replace them, right? And then what they realize is that it doesn't work. Is that we're in an era where the version of content marketing that you're talking about, which I would argue was never very effective content marketing to begin with. It might have been what people did, but it wasn't what good content marketing ever was. That was declining in effectiveness already as we moved into a zero-click environment within Google. But the dynamics of AI search now mean that what you're actually being rewarded for is a strong brand and people talking about your brand on third-party sites. So we saw as more and more of search has moved to AI, let's write a bunch of mediocre, shitty content clustered around a topic, that just doesn't work anymore. That having a bunch of like just check the box brand posts on social coming from your company page doesn't work anymore. No one sees it. The algorithms don't reward that at all. And so the tech companies that adopted using AI to create this super mid content, they saw first that this doesn't work. It's very telling that the most aggressive companies at hiring these storytelling roles that pay $500K plus a year in total comp are OpenAI and Anthropic, the makers of the two, hottest models right now. You could throw them in a triumvirate with Gemini, right? They were the first to see it, that their technology alone, while powerful, isn't enough to actually break through and tell a truly human story that's going to change the fate of the company. And then I think that the other shift that we're seeing that makes a difference is that this is centering now more in the office of the CEO than necessarily a marketing initiative. That's probably a different topic. Maybe we can get into that later. But, when you talk about this kind of split between storytelling and content marketing, like the content marketing that you're talking about, right, as like what we think of as content marketing, it should have storytelling. Like the people doing that were never very effective at their jobs to begin with. And B, the reason that we're seeing this shift in tech first is because they were the first to adopt this technology to see that it doesn't work, which is why that I do think we'll see a little bit of like a trickle down effect, right, with tech being an early sign of a trend that'll likely grow to other industries as they go through the same cycle of realizing that cutting your employees and replacing them with AI on the content side just isn't really that effective.
Listen, I get you and I'm with you. What I want to question you on, and we had a little chat about this before, and I feel like we're coming at it from two different points of view, which is cool. I found you a couple of years ago, but just recently you've like blown my mind with some of the news coming out of Anthropic and chat and OpenAI on the sort of salaries they're paying for top storytelling roles. So I think one was quoted at like $775,000, one was $500,000, even the $400,000. I think you said Anthropic has hired like up to 80 storytellers just recently. I just don't know if that's sustainable in a business world where they've all got to be competitive. You think that top level, top echelon, from Meta upwards, you think those salaries might actually be new normal?
Yeah, I think they might be sticky. The 75,000 role was a Netflix role, but it was a product storytelling role. If you look at kind of how Anthropic does comp, right, they're basically paying 300 to 400K in base, but then you have bonus and you have equity that's extremely valuable on top of that. So you're easily clearing a 500,000 in a lot of those roles. And listen, why do I think this is different than the previous cycles that we've seen a little bit? I think one, I've been in this content marketing industry since I, gave up my full journalism, owning a media company hat to go build Contently, right? And we were very content and, internal brand journalism forward company, but I still was on the tech side and very much, helping build and evangelize this industry. I think that what we saw a decade ago with the first content marketing, brand journalism, brand storytelling boom was that this was sidelined as a side project inside of most companies where they said, oh yeah, we're going to do this thing like Amex and Red Bull does, and we're going to create a digital magazine. It's going to be on a separate site, and just people are going to magically show up and it's going to drive some business value for us, right? And most people saw that that doesn't actually work. If content's not integrated into the rest of your company narrative and your marketing program, it's not going to be very effective. And so there was this backlash. Then we ended into this era in which every single social media platform promised that, hey, you give us $1 in ads, we're going to give you $1.50 back. They essentially juiced their numbers and evangelized these dashboards that, of course, told them that your ads on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn were really effective, even if they aren't, because they're incentivized to do that to get you to spend more money there. CEOs and CFOs were told this lie that we could attribute every single marketing dollar with incredible accuracy and just do this data-driven enter this data-driven utopia where we're just scaling with positive ROI. Saw that didn't actually bear out, right? It became harder and harder to buy attention, harder and harder to win over customers with ads. Vast majority of companies cannot get a positive ROI on paid advertising anymore because it's so much harder to capture and win attention in this landscape. So what are we seeing now that's different? I think we're seeing that these roles are focused much more around CEO levels and initiatives. Storytelling is coming top down from the CEO. I don't even know if I'm very bullish on like CMOs moving forward in the role as it exists today. I think it's still kind of like often a crappy and really tough role as it has been for the past decade. But on the nature of storytelling as it sits in the office of the CEO, as it becomes this initiative where you want to instill it in every part of your organization, as you want to be the differentiator that allows you to break through and win attention and drive the narrative in your industry, it becomes very strategically important on the level of the product. Like just look at what's happening with OpenAI and Anthropic right now, where the valuation and the user growth of those companies is being really heavily impacted by this narrative battle that's playing out with everything that's happening with the Department of War, where OpenAI opened, right, when they were founded with this really compelling narrative that we're going to save the world from the existential threat of AI. We're the good guys. We're a nonprofit. We're going to achieve AGI for public good, effective altruism all the way. But over the last couple of years, they've lost the plot, right? They've done a bunch of things that are completely incoherent with that core brand narrative. They've silenced employees. They've launched a slop-ridden, social media network that's like some dystopian version of TikTok and Sora 2. They've introduced ads. They've just done a ton of things that are really incoherent with that mission. And then as soon as Anthropic For those who don't know the full story, Anthropic basically stood up to the DoD, or now called the Department of War, because we're in some sort of 1984 novel here in the United States. And they basically said to the Department of War, like, hey, are you using our technology to create killer robots in a mass surveillance state? And the Department of War was like, how dare you ask that? We're going to simultaneously call you a national security threat, but also say that you're so important to national security at the same time in a very contradictory way that we might have to nationalize you. And so they were in this giant battle. And then they became, through a lot of the storytelling that they were doing online, through great memos and essays, a bit of a hero in the US for standing up to a kind of unhinged administration that wanted to use AI to create killer robots, which no one really wants. And as soon as they did that, OpenAI swoops in and Sam Altman says, hey, we'll sign the deal and we will create the killer robots in the mass surveillance state for you. And right now, what is happening in the aftermath of that? As Anthropic has done a great job of crafting Dario, their CEO, and the company as the saviors of safe AI that's very coherent with their original brand narrative. They are rocketing up the App Store charts. They've been in the #1 spot for most of the past few weeks. They've gone from having 5% of OpenAI's users 9 months ago to now almost leveling up with OpenAI, right? What has happened to ChatGPT? They've seen a 295% increase in uninstalls. So even there, you see the massive business impact that comes from your core brand narrative and winning this attentional and narrative battle online. So like when we talk about like what does the boardroom see? Yes, if like the purpose of brand storytellers is creating blog posts and landing pages and webinars, of course you're not going to pay them $500,000, $600,000 a year. That's absurd. But if it's about winning the narrative battle and becoming the category leader in an incredibly freaking valuable sector in a world in which, you know, the CapEx of our top 10 companies essentially dominates the entire market, like, yeah, then I can certainly see those storytellers continue to be valued in that way.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. I mean, yeah. So my question then is scale down from that that kind of crazy socio-political, economic, business, like mega mammoth story that's affecting all of us around the world, down to the way marketing works in my audience's businesses, B2B. Everything is scaled back because of AI and cost and everything else, and the way people think marketing gets done. So everything's being stripped back to very, very under-resourced teams trying to do everything, which is what Do More with Less is about. And it's really, do you think that marketing teams are going to have, for the first time in my experience, a genuine storyteller role rather than a content person or a content media specialist, like a genuine storyteller role? Not storyteller sitting outside the CEO of one of the big five, I get, right? But storyteller in marketing to help brands amplify, identify, pinpoint, and really amplify a powerful tale about who they are and why they exist. Do you think that's a reality?
I think so. I mean, we're seeing, yes, short answer, yes. We're seeing the job openings for that include kind of asking for storytellers double in the last year, according to LinkedIn data. So we are seeing that as an overall trend. However, I think it's worth digging into what the actual role is, because I think it can feel really frustrating saying like, hey, I'm a good writer. I'm a good filmmaker. No one is banging down my door in my LinkedIn inbox to pay me $500,000 a year. What the hell? So like, what is the actual role and what is most valuable? And so what I argue in Superscale is that the winning equation for the next stage of work is that the ability to be a great storyteller and communicator, right, is this super skill that powers all the soft skills that'll matter most in an age where AI can do most technical tasks better than us, right? Empathy, communication, leadership, collaboration, adaptability, critical thinking, writing, telling stories opens all of that up. It's the secret sauce. It's the age-old cognitive technology that allows us to connect with other people. Now, if you think of this from a marketing perspective, how do I think about my role? It isn't that it's storytelling like or AI. It's both, right? But the order that you really want to do it in, and this is the way that super skill is structured, is that you want to master those storytelling foundations first because that's the unique human edge, and then layer AI mastery on top of that as an amplifier that allows you to make a much bigger impact, especially because these storytelling roles, as we move forward, it's going to be both being the storyteller who can find and craft and pull out that narrative, right? And work hand in hand with the CEO and the execs to really define what is that true narrative we're going to stick to as a company. But then it's also building the system so that infuses within every aspect of your company, right? So it's in product, it's in sales, it's in engineering, it's in customer success. Everyone is living and breathing this narrative and built around it. And so that requires a more multifaceted skill set than just being a great writer and a good filmmaker. It's a really good base layer, right, to have those skills. But then you also need the operational skills on top of that. So it's this combination in tandem that I think is going to be that role. I'm not sure it'll even necessarily sit just inside of marketing teams. I think we're going to rethink the way that teams are structured in a lot of different ways as AI proliferates inside of organizations over the next several years. I can't say that I know what the org structure in most companies is going to look like in 5 years once we actually kind of get over this AI adoption curve, which I think is a lot slower than most people in Silicon Valley give it credit for. An analogy my friend Dan Balsams, the founder of Goodfire, used is that it's like a supersonic AI is like a supersonic bubble in a tub of molasses, and tub of molasses is just our inherent kind of slowness to change and transform in corporate America. But like if you're thinking about how you want to position yourself, I think it's that storyteller, but also systematic operator role. And AI is going to be an inherent part of how we build those operating systems for storytelling because it's going to be like the base layer of most technology and workflows moving forward. So like hone your storytelling skills, but simultaneously, yeah, be like trying to master AI and Claude specifically, which just is dominating the work market right now, because using those two in tandem is going to be really powerful. Less on just a pure content creation side. Then you get really pulled into that sea of slop and you don't want to do that. But on a systems workflow slide, like the stuff is like, it's like magic.
It's kind of, it was made clear we have to be on top of this. So let's all train together and make sure everybody in the company is an expert, no matter what you do. And at that point, on diving in, it took me like 6 months of last year to get to the point where it's like, okay, so look, I still am a much better writer and thinker and ideas person than this thing, but I can train it. And I'm training my LLMs to get better over time and starting to have conversations with it where I tell it, no, that's not fucking good enough, or you've totally let me down there, or that's not what I'm expecting from you, or like, can you go through again what it is that you know about me that says that just isn't going to be like that, that's not even the basis for the work that I'm going to do. I need more. So there's been a whole training period, and now I think I'm in a place where I understand for myself how to use it to help me get to where I need to be quicker so I can produce great work. Is that training piece and that kind of AI twinned with the great skills of storytelling, is that what's in the book? Is that what we should be expecting?
Yeah, so the book is structured in 3 parts. First part of the book is making this argument for the kind of lead up, right, is making this argument for storytelling is the super skill of the AI age, really diving into the behavioral and neuroscience of storytelling and why it has this incredible pull over us. And then the kind of like practical, actionable part of the book is the last 3 parts. The first part is Unlock, which is about tapping into your core storytelling foundations and skills. Like we're all born storytellers. I have a 3-year-old. He spends 98% of his life in Neverland right now, right? Like we're instinctively drawn to this world of stories. It's programmed into us. It's how we rose from being a mid-rate species wandering the earth to these ultra social learning machines that have come to spread out over the planet and go to the moon and rally people to do great things, right? Storytelling is very core to who we are. And we tend to think that we are storytellers as we get older, as we come to doubt ourselves, but we all do have these inherent skills. We just need to hone them. So there I reveal kind of the core elements of storytelling that I've discovered through my neuroscience and behavioral science research over the last decade, and walk you through kind of how to develop and tap into those storytelling superpowers that you have and develop the sort of taste to know what is good. The second part is around Unleash, which is applying those storytelling skills to very specific and crucial business contexts. So developing and communicating and evangelizing a big idea, right? And unique IP, storytelling for sales, storytelling for leadership, building an audience. And then the last part of the book, Upgrade, is about how to then use AI intelligently in your storytelling practice. And what I really evangelize is like, don't outsource your thinking and writing to AI. That's where you start to see cognitive atrophy. It's where you start to see a decrease in skills mastery. Even Anthropic's own research recently has shown us that this is the case. But you can use AI to free up the time to automate so much of the busy work, the shallow work, the schlep work in your day-to-day life that keeps you from having the time to do the deep creative work that's truly, truly meaningful and rewarding to us. Like great storytelling, great creativity requires time. Like we're not meant to be in this frantic schedule where we're hopping from Slack to Zoom to Instagram to Twitter and just freaking mind boggled 99% of our day, right? That's not where great creative work comes. It creates from having chunks of time for deep work. And AI right now, there's a huge opportunity where you can automate so much of that by turning AI into essentially your executive assistant and a sort of second brain, right? Second level of storytelling innovation AI is iterate. We can now tell stories in such more dynamic ways than we could before because of this technology. We shouldn't give up all those little choices that make the stories that we tell meaningful, but we don't need a full CGI team to create the sort of videos that, 5 years ago would have cost us 6-7 figures, right? We can do a lot of this now with AI in really interesting ways. We can research much more effectively. We can brainstorm much more effectively and find those small leaps of creativity off of our own ideas that often brainstorming with other people unlocks. But with AI, you can just do it so much faster, right? There's so much upside here that we can gain without losing the soul of our storytelling. And then the last part of the book is around innovation in storytelling. How do we rethink storytelling at its core? How do we build these communal storytelling experiences, learning from the most innovative AI artists today, people like Holly Herndon, who have built communal AI models where their fans can remix their voices and content and create new things in interesting profit-sharing ways. Instead of just allowing the Silicon Valley giants to steal our IP, how can we take it back for ourselves and kind of reimagine what storytelling is and what engagement is? So I think that's where it gets exciting, right? But the equation there, like very much is master those storytelling foundations first, or else you're just going to atrophy. You're going to be outsourcing the machine. You're not going to know what's good. You're not going to have the ability to get up in front of the boardroom and break out that killer story that's going to lock people in. You're not going to be in that enterprise sale and be able to pull out that customer story that's going to save the deal or allow you to go from a $50,000 deal to a $250,000 deal, right? Like those are the core things that are still going to be really important, but then apply AI on top of it. And of course, because it's a book, we're kind of victims of the fact that you read a book linearly, right? So it's this first and that, but the truth is you can be doing it at the same time, right? I'm doing it at the same time every day. I'm continuing to try and hone my storytelling skills. I'm also setting aside time to figure out, okay, how do I set up Claude in the best way so it really understands me in the way that you're talking about, right? That it's the right markdown files, skills, projects, that I'm getting the most out of this technology because it allows me to do more of the type of work that I love and less of the bullshit work that bogs down my day and leaves me feeling like I didn't get anything done when I lie down to sleep at night.
Joe, it sounds amazing. Can't wait to read it. And for anybody who hasn't already put their name down to receive their copy, go to Amazon straight away. Super skill. My storytelling is the superpower of the AI age.
Can I give a quick plug as well?
Yeah.
So In the meantime, for UK readers, as well as anyone else, I have a Substack that's pretty popular. After the book came out, it was kind of top 10 rising in business for most of the last few weeks on Substack, called The Storytelling Edge, name of my first book. So it's storytellingedge.substack.com. Maybe you could put that in the show notes. And I'm having a deal right now where if you get out an annual subscription, I will send you a personalized signed copy. If you're in the States, it gets a little too expensive in the UK, but it can also get you an ebook, maybe a little bit early. If you're in the UK, you subscribe, as well as access to storytelling courses, dope socks, bonus content, trends report, and more. So honestly, the deal that I'm giving out there, it doesn't make any financial sense, but I'm trying to kind of build this community of storytellers, host a lot of events, both in person and virtual, and really bring this community of business storytellers together. So that's another way that you can get the book in addition to buying it on Amazon, or you can just subscribe for free and follow my work. But very much appreciate the chance to come on this podcast and to give my salesy plug at the end.
You had me at dope socks. Joe, listen, it's been an absolute privilege. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime. Take care.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Bye.